Today we're going to talk about one of the most popular types of properties in Singapore. And yes, you're right, and that is HDB apartments. Follow Property Link Brothers on this floor plan breakdown series, and we're going to digest HDB floor plans. Let's go. Alright, so HDB apartments are the bread and butter of the formation of Singapore properties. And in Singapore, there are approximately 1.1 to 1.2 million HDB housing stock at this point in time. A lot of young couples will start out with their first BTO apartment or HDB resale, and of course a lot of seniors will retire and fully pay the HDB apartment in Singapore, and that is one of the key foundations that has brought us to today. So in this episode, we're going to digest as many HDB floor plans as we can. But of course, there are so many different types that I can't possibly share with you everything. But we're going to walk through some of the differences between the previous evolution of HDB layouts and today's layout. And that will be the key distinction of today's episode. Now, there's one very popular website in Singapore, and that is called TioAlida.com. And if you want to understand more, do head on to that website. Now, we're not affiliated with TioAlida.com, but personally, I enjoy all the content as well as the floor plans, as well as all the history elements within that website itself. And for today's context, we're going to draw our sources for various sources, and we're going to list down all the sources right here, right now. We're going to link them down below. Sometimes when a young couple first kickstart into a search for HDB property, they might get a little bit confused because, for example, if you're looking at a condominium and wherever people say, hey, I'm looking for a 3-bedder condominium, that is very different from a 3-room flat when it comes to HDB apartments. For HDB context, if you look at 3-room flat, it means that there's 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. Now, when we talk about a 2-room flat, it means that there's 1 bedroom and 1 living room. But compared to a private property, a 2-bedder will purely mean a 2-bedroom condominium with 2 bedrooms and 1 living room. I want to bring on this first video first because this was a video that almost broke a lot of headlines on the local news media because that was a HDB landed property that we sold in the past. But then, do you know that actually this particular property right there at Jalan Bahagia, it is actually a 3-room apartment. So for HDB landed properties, they're actually being classified as a 3-room layout apartment. There are only a limited amount in Singapore, and most of them are in the Queenstown region or they are in the Jalan Bahagia region. Now I want to start with the first floor plan, which is the 3-room HDB floor plan. Now, pre-1990 season, all the way from 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, you will be able to find various distinctions based on the estates that you're going to. We will usually see under the 3-room HDB spectrum that you have 3A, 3NG, 3I, 3S. So what are all these different kinds of designs when it comes to 3-room HDB apartments? To recap, 3-room HDB apartments means that you have 2 distinct bedrooms and 1 living and dining being combined together. Now, this is a very typical 3A floor plan. You will realize that in the past, the dining is actually part of the kitchen space because the living room is by itself a huge rectangle. The kitchen by itself is a huge rectangle. Now, one very clear distinction of the pre-1990s as well as after 2000, you will start to realize that HDB apartments are created very differently. In modern day context, if you go to new towns, for example, like Sengkang and Punggol, and maybe like a Jurong West, you realize that the latest HDB apartments, they are created with an intent to look more and more like the condo kind of layout, which means that when you head in, you will get your living room facing towards the same direction as most of the bedrooms. And that has thus created a lot of brightness that is coming into the living space as well as the bedroom space, and it looks very similar to the modern day condo layout with walkways heading into the bedrooms, with the kitchen being tucked right beside the entranceway of the main door. However, if we were to look at the pre-1990 season and you go to most mature estates, for example like Ang Mo Kio or maybe even some of the newer towns like Hougang, you will tend to realize that you will see variations in terms of 3-room construct, and most of the time the buildings are constructed in a way that most of the units are single load in fashion. One of the setbacks of the older kind of design architecture was that you always have neighbors walking past your corridor. Natural tendency for a human is that, if I walk past the corridor, I might want to just have a look at, my neighbors. So sometimes people will always close their windows along the corridor walkway. In modern times, of course, that corridor privacy has been solved already. Your only opening towards your corridor will be your main door, and that is of course one of the key plus points of the modern HDB layout. Kudos to HDB for always improving and innovating over the years. So 3A typically will be about 70 odd square meters. And when you see 3A, it means that there is a common bathroom in your kitchen and there's an ensuite bathroom in your master room. Similarly for 3NG, 3NG means 3-room new generation, and 3S, 3-room simplified, also have the ensuite bathroom. Now, the only distinction is 3I, which is the 3-room improved model. So the 3I model does not have the ensuite bathroom in your master room. So sometimes when people buy 3i models, they will actually hack down and seek approval from HDB to hack down the opening to enter into the kitchen area's bathroom, because the 3i model is in such a way that there are 2 bathrooms in your kitchen, but one bathroom has WC and one bathroom is just purely for bathing. So there's short of one WC outlet in the 3i context. Nowadays, after the HDB upgrading program for all the lift levels, they also upgraded to have an extra utility room at some of these 3i models, especially the 3-room flats, most of the time with only one WC, which is the 3i model. Those were the first to be upgraded. But of course, over the years, we also see some 3S models having that utility room. Some 3NG models also have that utility room. If you were to look at a modern layout, which is typically now around 60 odd square meters, you will realize that there's a few new additions. The living and the bedrooms are all facing towards the same direction. Nowadays, HDB apartments, they have the home shelter built into their home. And of course, a lot of families will then use this home shelter to be like a storeroom. You might want to take note of the position of the home shelter, because this household shelter, if it's in the middle of the house, sometimes that prevents you from expanding the layout if you want to hack down certain parts of the hall or certain parts of the bedrooms to expand that portion right there, especially if it's tucked very near to the kitchen, because that's not even allowed and the walls are extremely thick. Some of the very good layouts with household shelter, it is actually very near to the entrance, so it does not affect the rest of the house, and that creates an opportunity that if you want to hack open an open kitchen, you want to combine some areas, there's a lot of flexibility. Before I move on to the 4-room kind of layout, is that you need to take note of all these dark color tone pillar points. So the dark color pillar points are pillars that you cannot hack, and all these like white color kind of lines you're allowed to hack, but of course do get your ID to check through, and of course any form of hacking you have to apply for approval at HDB and you have to submit approval before you start your renovation. There's also some very tiny little dark color pillars, and of course all these dark color pillars, sometimes if it's very tiny and very slim, you're allowed to hack it, but you need PE approval on that. So get your ID to actually advise you further on what kind of walls are you allowed to hack and not allowed to hack. However, there was a series whereby HDB started to use prefab kind of technology that actually created layouts whereby it's very hard to hack anymore. From bedroom number 3 to the living area, you're not allowed to hack down this wall. So coming to the next portion, which are 4-room apartments. 4-room means that there are only 3 bedrooms. Pre-1990 season, you also get the similar fashion as 3-room flats. So you get 4A, 4NG, 4S, 4I, and then there's one new type called 4 Standard. And nowadays, since the post-1990s and 2000s era, HDB has technically removed all these kind of connotations. Basically now it's all just 4A model, or sometimes they will just call a 4-room flat, or they will call 4-room premium. But let me go back to the pre-1990s era, where 4A you get typical 105 square meters. So for the typical layout in the past, there are no walkway corridors towards your bedroom, thereby saving a lot of space, pumping the rest of the space into the living and dining area. You usually get gigantic bedrooms like this, and you get a store that's tucked within your kitchen space. Sometimes they will hack open the opening of the kitchen and dining space. You get your ensuite in your master bedroom, and usually you get like a gigantic living space right at the opening of the door. 4NG model is slightly smaller, 90 odd square meters. You do have ensuite bathroom. The key distinction is that it is much smaller than the 4A model, and you realize that actually the living space is smaller. Dining table has within the kitchen. The next model, which is the 4S model, is slightly even smaller as well. You do have all the en-suites. It's just that everything will just shrink slightly in fashion. When we come to the 4I model, it is exactly the same as 3i model, whereas there are no ensuite bathrooms within your master. So you also have only one WC here and one bath, and they are both having the entryway from the kitchen area. So this is the typical 4i model in the past, and notice that when HDB created the 4i model, there's also no storeroom available. And if you look at present day 4-room flat, this is a typical 4-room model. Similarly, it looks really extremely like a condo layout because the living and the bedrooms are all having the same facing. Kitchen is tucked right at the corner. And of course, if you see these kind of walls without dark lines, that means that you can hack them down, and that would then create like an open kitchen concept. And this is the layout that I think a lot of buyers would prefer, to have the household shelter that's tucked right beside the entrance. Imagine a household shelter is tucked right here. It means that you cannot really have a full-on kind of open kitchen concept. Now, let's move on to 5-room. There's typically 5A model and 5I model. Now, in today's context, it's just called the 5I model. Something that's very interesting about the older days 5-room model is that you get an extra bedroom. So if you look at this, beautiful layout, isn't it? Why? Because you have this like living room, dining is in the middle, and then you have a bonus family area. That's like your secondary living room, and there's a lot of things that you can do with it. Why? Because it has a beautiful opening, full height panel windows right here. The room sizes are great. Your master room has an ensuite, you have a service balcony, and you can create like a very dynamic layout because it's extremely squarish. Nowadays, HDB don't create this kind of point block concept anymore, but the pre-2000 seasons, this is one of the cream of the crop kind of layout. You just create so many beautiful renovation within this. Since I'm already in 5-room, I need to set another distinction because a 5-bedroom condo layout means that it really has 5 bedrooms. But when you talk about 5-room HDB apartment, you only have 3 bedrooms by default. So 5-room HDB apartment, you only have 3 bedrooms, living and dining. If you reference back to the start of this video, when I mentioned, if we say that it's 3-room HDB flat, it means there's 2 bedrooms. 4-room HDB flat, 3 bedrooms. It's 5-room HDB flat, by right you should have 4 bedrooms. And yes, that was present in the older days. So if you look at this Choa Chu Kang layout, it was built from 1988 to 1990. 122 square meters is called a 5-room improved version with properly and legit 4 bedrooms. So the study room is actually a full bedroom by itself. In modern day context, if you go to the newer non-matured town, they have sort of inserted that dotted line in the living area for you to create that study room back. We need to talk about the executive maisonettes. They technically stopped building executive maisonettes for a timeline because a lot of people were saying that, you know, the staircase is causing an old age issue. The owners will age in future and all the bedrooms are upstairs. But executive maisonettes, the key beauty is that executive maisonettes has 3 bathrooms. And this is the only one with 3 bathrooms out of all the HDB floor plan layout. The modern era, for example, like Punggol, they now have also maisonettes again, and some of the maisonettes have like loft concept. That is a new version, and of course some of them will cost more than $1 million. Even in mature estates, some of the maisonettes are already above $1 million as well. With executive maisonette, we need to move on to executive apartments, which a typical layout will be like this. And executive apartments have 4 bedrooms, typically range about 1.3 plus to 1.4 plus square meters. EAs are the largest version. However, EAs only have 2 bathrooms compared to EMs. And when you buy EA, of course, it's a single level, you're buying the biggest unit, but of course they have already stopped building that. The last era that we saw was actually in the newer non-mature estates like Punggol. This is a very typical Punggol EA with a 3-bedroom with a study area, like an open study which you can cordon off to be a 4 bedrooms. I want to talk about the last type of floor plan for today, and that is called the adjoint floor plan, or you can call it the jumbo floor plan. In the older estates, you also get to see 3-room adjoint units, which is like, for example, a 3NG and a 3NG. This happens naturally in the past because one neighbor wants to sell and then they're willing to sell to the neighbor right beside them. And if in between them is the adjoining wall of their 2 living rooms, they can then apply to HDB to adjoin these units and then hack down their living room, but they have to maintain 2 entrances, but 1 unit number will be removed, and thus this whole unit become an adjoint unit. 3NG plus 3NG combined is not called 6-room adjoint, it's called 5-room adjoint because HDB like to remove 1 bedroom from that labeling. So if you are a 5-room flat, you only should have at max 4 bedrooms. Now this kind of adjoint unit is beautiful. Why? You can remove the center wall of the kitchen and the living room, apply to HDB to remove this small little pillar here. But the beauty is that you're going to have 4 bathrooms. You can recreate this entire space into a 5-bedroom unit because you already have 4 bedrooms. Use one of the kitchen to be the 5th bedroom. 2 entrances is a little bit like a dual key, fantastic for huge families. But of course, the most interesting one is the Woodlands Jumbo. Just have a look at this. By default, it already have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 bedrooms already. But take note that in Woodlands, when HDB created like a lot of 3 and 4 rooms on the same slab block, what they did eventually was that they combined some of these 3 and 4 room flats together to form that kind of mega size jumbo in order to attract bigger families to move to Woodlands. So one downside is that sometimes when you buy jumbo flats in Woodlands, you have to take note of the fact that some of the walls you cannot hack down, and of course some layouts allows you to hack down certain walls. So this kind of layouts are beautiful. Now the modern layouts are typically more towards like the condo kind of layouts with facing towards the same direction. That created of course a lot more privacy from your neighbors walking past your corridor. The olden days was more like a single loading. However, the downside is that you're living and your main door faces towards a corridor, and of course that has some privacy issues as well. And that's the pro and con of the evolution of how HDB architecture has evolved over time. And we hope that you enjoy our Property Brothers floor plan breakdown series. And we're moving on to the next and final episode, which is episode number 4, where we talk about landed layouts. So stay tuned for episode number 4 and hope to see you soon. Cheers, take care.